One of the foundational parts of any leadership position is ensuring that the leadership or management level in your organization is a solid one. It doesn't matter if you are the only manager in your organization or whether you have several layers of management reporting to you. The important part is that you ensure that this level function as a genuine force multiplier, that it can really help your people, your team, get better, learn, execute faster, as opposed to essentially being overhead, adding just more and more process and not adding value. In this video, I want to share how I usually help companies either kickstart their leadership levels if you're just putting in place the first managers under you, or if you're new in your role, or you're just in a role where you sense that the people managing aren't that great or having some difficulties, the very basic first steps you can take right now in order to make things easier and set them up for success, helping everyone start improving much faster. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive coach and consultant, and I help people just like you create teams worth leading. Life's just too short to lead mediocre teams, and a big part of that is when you're stuck there with people who have roles that should have so much impact on the team, and yet they cannot deliver. And a lot of the times, this is not just because of their skills or that they have any specific issue preventing them from doing their role better. It's about the lack of guidance and structure that you have the ability to start injecting right now. So let's get to it. This is critical because when we don't have enough guidance, and I see a lot of people, especially if you're a new sort of director, VP, CTO, or if it's your first time or you're new in the organization, you might be reluctant to come in and say, here is how we do things. Here are the defaults. You let people do their own thing. You don't want to feel like you're too much of a micromanager or whatever. However, when we don't have at least a layer of commonality, it means that you're leaving just way too much ambiguity between the teams. It makes collaboration between teams a lot harder. It means that when people are moving internally, it's a bigger shock for them. It takes them more time to become effective. And also, even if the people there are already somewhat experienced, when each person has to come up with their own approach from scratch, it means that we're usually not maximizing learning. We have to redo our mistakes without learning from others' mistakes, or at least not as fast as we can. And this ends up being a big waste of time and effort, during which instead you could have had people improve much faster, learn much faster, and have real collaboration going on. So it doesn't mean that you need to be a micromanager to avoid this, but by providing some guidelines, some defaults, you can make a big change in how people operate and allow them to become even better. And again, get it out of your mind. You're not micromanaging if you're just telling people, here's, in general, our operating system as leaders here in the company. I think that's not being overbearing. That's just basic, all right? Now, let's talk about how you can introduce these things and how they should look. I think that if you allow each manager, for example, to decide which traditions, rituals, ceremonies they're going to have in their team, you're going to have a lot of variability because each person comes from a different background, each has their own preferences. And to be honest, once you go over the basics, the changes usually don't have that big of an impact. So we gain a lot merely by having enough similarity across the teams, as opposed to letting anyone tinker and customize things completely. It doesn't have to be like a bespoke suit starting from scratch for each and every single team. Most of the times you can have a made-to-measure solution that starts with something already existing on the shelf and we adjust it to the team. Having that made-to-measure first pass that we start with can save you a lot of time as a leader and can save your managers reporting to you a lot of effort, because you're giving them something that should be solid, that should allow them to start as a healthy first choice and start iterating from that as opposed to starting from scratch. So when you want to introduce this, I suggest talking about it exactly like this. We want to have more commonality to allow ourselves as a team of leaders, managers in the organization to collaborate even more easily, have the ability to share lessons, use the same language, so the different teams become a bit more homogeneous when it comes to how we operate. And by doing that, we're going to reduce a lot of cognitive load from the managers and from some of the senior people, because things will be settled. You don't have to constantly change them, tinker, have to explain to others how you do things, and remember that that team does it that way and that team does it this way. Instead, you can just have the defaults and have things operate pretty much the same across the board that will allow people to focus on the right things, not messing around with how we manage things. You can allow the managers to start focusing on their actual work and not with all of these tiny decisions that are not trivial for many who are first-timers and even for some experienced managers. Some suggestions for how this basic first pass should look like. I'm not going to be too prescriptive. If you have any specific questions, my email is going to be in the video description, and really feel free to reach out to me. But I want to mention a few things that I think your default package should include. First of all, yes, it should say how we manage when it comes to, for example, how we provide feedback. I hope you're not just providing feedback with, performance reviews once a year, but you have something that's more ongoing. Suggest having one-on-ones regularly with everyone, have a default cadence for this and a default agenda. What do you expect people to do in these one-on-ones? What do you expect managers in your organization to report back to you? How we manage our teams. For example, you can choose sprints that have the same length across the board to make things easier to collaborate and sync in the company. You can talk about the sorts of learning points or management points that you want to have in your rituals. It doesn't matter if one team's planning session is an hour and another's is 2 hours. If for one they do some homework before and then they just sit down to decide, and with the other they do brainstorming together. I don't usually care about those details. You can start with a general suggestion, but what I do care is about having a sort of meeting or a part of the process that we define, and we define its output. Why do we even have a planning meeting? Because we want to have this and that ready for sprints at that level, with this explanation, knowing this, knowing that, what we need to relay to others in the company. So have that as the meeting. Usually meetings should have the output, like the reason we want to have them, what change they have made on reality that means that that meeting was even worth having. Similarly, do you want to have daily stand-ups or not? I'm not religious about having the entire organization do the same, but I do think that we usually should start from, again, the healthy default that works for the vast majority of the organization. So talk about how that should look like. What do you want to have at the end of each iteration? How do you evaluate your process? We can talk about retros, we can talk about having postmortems when things go wrong. Think about a healthy basket of these meetings and processes that you want to have that set the stage for a healthy, growing, learning organization where you ensure that people have the time to invest in learning, in spotting areas where they shine or areas where they need help, so that we can always be on top of things. As managers, we should not just be managing the day-to-day happenings. We should ensure that at least some of the time we take a step back, we look at things from a distance and have some longer-term vision of what's going on. And that won't happen without these types of meetings. Another part is how your managers in the organization should collaborate. How do we expect them to work with one another when they need help, when they have issues? Should it always be people escalating to you? Can you talk about how we solve conflicts between teams? If you're just starting, maybe this is an overreach and you can wait with that. If you already have a few teams and you probably have found yourself being referee a bit too often, you can talk about how we want to solve conflict, how I expect people to approach me when they disagree. Am I just supposed to act like, I don't know, a judge and ask for all the evidence, or can I expect them to come to me with each person's like debating points and we can decide together? I usually think it's better if they don't even come to you, if they're able to talk about this. Talk about how you expect people to be treated when it comes to if they want to talk about salaries, about their terms, about switching positions, about getting promoted. All of these things for a lot of managers are like unknowns. They might hear about them for the first time when someone approaches them, and then they get a deer in the headlights look. You don't have to have a specific written down process for each and every single of the, so you get a request for a promotion, what do you do? It doesn't have to be all like, robot thing like that. But I do want you to discuss in general the boundaries with your managers, what you usually allow them to handle by themselves. For example, someone wanting to take a bit more vacation time or something like that, as opposed to things that they should escalate or just even tell their people to talk directly to you. Give your people these boundaries, because as we know with, educating our kids, boundaries can actually create a lot more freedom for people, because I know where is safe for me to act. I'm not going to be afraid of going past a point where I'm going to do something wrong, because I know what is the safe space for me. When we have these healthy constraints, they can help everyone be a lot more autonomous, a lot more deliberate. So we want to create those. And lastly, when you're thinking about how you introduce this and how the team is going to accept what you're sharing, in general, I've advocated in the past for showing a lot of this as being an experiment. It's likely that whatever you're starting with is not going to be perfect. You're going to have to iterate. You're going to have to change things up. And therefore, it's not as if you're coming down from, Mount Sinai with the tablets and saying, here are the commandments of what we have to do, but here's my suggestion, and I want us to review this. For example, in 3 months, in 6 months, I'm going to put it on the calendar so we make sure that we tackle this and see if it's working or not and adjust accordingly. This is not the final version of it. And yet, if someone's giving you pushback on things that you think are at the core of the sort of organization you want to have, if someone is against something that you view as a value, as how you want the organization to look like, something that's important for you when it comes to the culture, that's where usually you'll have to push back. You'll have to stand your ground and say, this is someplace that I'm not going to be moving from. This is something that's critical. You shouldn't have too many of these, because I hope that most of the people you have in your organization share most of your beliefs. You have some diversity, but not so much so there's no overlap. But when it happens, if you give way too much, you can end up having the cultural equivalent of cacophony. You have everything happening, everything's different, and you can't really tell what's working and what's not. And I don't recommend doing that. That's it. It's simple, maybe not easy at first, but I don't think it's too hard. You want to start by laying these bricks, deciding on how you want to show these things to people, how you can make some decisions for them so they have less of a cognitive load. They can just know what they're doing and focus on where it matters. Like, I hope that your engineers are not reviewing their coding conventions every day. They're just busy actually delivering the work, right? We want to have the same with leaders. They don't have to be deciding from scratch about how we lead our team every single day, every time someone leaves and joins, etc. We want to have a common layer that essentially works. That's it. I hope you took something from this video. If you have any questions, any ideas, something you want to share, I'm always checking the comments, so feel free. And one last thing, if you haven't checked out yet my new offering, Unplugged with Aviv, where I have these video sessions live with you every month, at least once a month, so we can share and talk about things that are top of mind for the group. And I'm answering questions and allowing you to send in some questions in advance, etc. Right now, it still has ridiculously low introductory pricing. The link with the details to everything is in the video notes, so do check that out. And I'll see you here in the next video. Ciao.